"You don't belong here." She said it loud enough for everyone to hear. But what she didn't know was who she had just said it to. Buckle up, family. This story has rage, revenge, redemption, and a twist so satisfying it'll echo in your bones. Hey, story family. If you love stories packed with emotion, drama, and justice served ice cold, you're in the right place. Today's story is about two black teens, twins, who were publicly humiliated on a flight. But what happened next left the entire plane speechless. Let's get into it. The airport was alive with the sound of movement, suitcases rolling, children laughing, boarding announcements echoing through the bright terminal. At Gate 7, passengers were lined up for Flight 829 to Los Angeles. Sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows, catching the polished floor like a spotlight on a stage. Sandra and Solomon Johnson, both 16, stood in line near the front. They were dressed cleanly and smart. Sandra in a navy cardigan over a white blouse, Solomon in a crisp collared shirt and dark jeans. Each had a backpack slung over one shoulder and a small carry-on in hand. They spoke quietly, heads slightly tilted toward each other, with the kind of closeness that only twins could share. As they reached the gate, the agent scanned their boarding passes. "First class. Welcome aboard." The woman smiled. They stepped onto the jet bridge, Sandra's eyes wide, nervous but excited. First class wasn't something they experienced often. This was a special treat, earned, not gifted. Their father had booked the tickets himself. Inside the plane, the cabin smelled faintly of citrus and new leather. The first-class seats were wide, plush, and empty except for a businessman checking emails and a woman with sunglasses already dozing. The twins found their seats minus 3A and 3B near the window. They settled in, stowed their bags, clicked their seatbelts, and glanced at each other with quiet smiles. Then came the sound of sharp heels. Mrs. Trudy Whitmore appeared in the aisle like a storm in silk. She was dressed head to toe in expensive cream-colored fabric, her diamond earrings catching the light, her lips pinched into a frown. She stopped dead when she saw them. "Excuse me," she barked, pointing her long manicured finger. "These seats are for first class." Sandra turned her head. Solomon looked up. Both blinked in confusion. "We're in the right seats," Sandra said softly, holding up her ticket. Mrs. Whitmore scoffed. "I don't think so. There must be a mistake." Flight attendant Claire rushed over, her smile tense. "Is there a problem?" she asked, already flustered. "These children are in my seats," Mrs. Whitmore snapped. Claire bent down, checked the tickets. Her face froze for a moment. Then she straightened, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. There seems to be a mix-up," she murmured to the twins, voice barely above a whisper. "Would you mind moving to economy for now? We'll fix it later." Solomon's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Sandra's hand trembled slightly as she unbuckled her seatbelt. She felt the eyes of strangers on her, judging, assuming. Her face flushed as if a spotlight had turned on her skin. The twins stood and moved toward the back. No one said a word in their defense. No one looked at them. The walk down the aisle felt miles long. They found two empty seats near the restroom. The walls here were scratched. The seat cushions were stained. A baby cried nearby. Sandra sat stiffly. Solomon stared straight ahead. Sandra pulled out her phone, thumbs moving fast. Solomon leaned in. "You think he'll answer?" She didn't reply. She just hit the call button. After one ring, a calm, deep voice answered on the other end. "Who did this to you?" The cabin filled quickly. Overhead bins slammed shut. The shuffle of settling passengers gave way to the usual chorus. Seatbelts clicking, pages turning, babies fussing as the last few people squeezed down the aisle. The plane's engines began their slow rumbling hum. Outside the windows, the tarmac shimmered under the mid-morning sun. Back in row 30, Sandra sat rigid, staring at the tray table in front of her. Solomon leaned forward, elbows on his knees, silent. Their matching carry-ons were stuffed under the seats, untouched. They hadn't spoken since the call. In first class, Mrs. Whitmore tugged off her gloves and sighed with loud disapproval, adjusting her silk scarf with theatrical annoyance. She snapped her fingers at a flight attendant. "I want some sparkling water. Room temperature. Not too cold this time," she said. Claire, still pale from the earlier scene, nodded quickly. "Yes, Mom." Then it came. Ding. A sharp, unnatural chime rang through the plane. It wasn't the usual tone. Something about it made people stop mid-sentence. Captain Reese emerged from the cockpit, tall and calm, moving down the aisle with purpose. His shoulders were squared, his face unreadable. Every eye followed him. He reached the front of the cabin and picked up the intercom handset. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice even, "we've just received a direct order from Executive Operations. Takeoff is temporarily delayed. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." A murmur spread through the rows. "What does that mean?" someone asked. "Are we being rerouted?" said another. From 3C, Mrs. Whitmore sat bolt upright. "Oh, come on," she snapped. "I have a very important meeting in Santa Monica. What is the delay this time?" No answer came. Claire ducked into the galley and pressed a button on her earpiece. In the back, Sandra rubbed her thumb over the edge of her phone. It had gone still, black screen, as if nothing had happened. Solomon reached over and gently closed her fingers around it. "They're not gonna let this slide," he whispered. Sandra didn't answer. She blinked fast. Her breathing was shallow. 3 rows ahead, a boy with spiky hair leaned toward his mother and whispered, "Why did those kids have to move?" That lady was mean. His mother looked down at her tray table, pretending not to hear. "Shay," she said, without looking at him. Then the doors opened again. A man in a Navy uniform stepped on board. He carried a thick envelope. His shoes clicked against the floor with a steady rhythm. He handed the envelope to Captain Reese without a word, then turned and stepped back off the plane. Claire peered at the captain. "What's going on?" she asked under her breath. Reese opened the envelope and read the first line. His brow twitched, barely, but enough for Claire to notice. Outside the windows, 3 black SUVs pulled up beside the plane, their tinted windows reflecting the sunlight. One door opened. A man in a dark suit stepped out, foam pressed to his ear, flanked by 2 others. Passengers leaned toward the windows, whispering, pointing. No one knew what was happening, but everyone could feel it. Something big was coming, something serious. No one knows what, but the suspense grows thick. In the front cabin, tension coiled like a spring. People shifted in their wide leather seats, murmuring to one another in clipped whispers. Some peeked out the windows, others tapped impatiently on armrests or refreshed their phones. The delay had now stretched past 20 minutes. Still no movement, still no explanation. Captain Reese reappeared from the cockpit, a clipboard in hand. He moved with the same unshaken calm, but his jaw looked tighter now, set like stone. He stepped up to the front of first class and faced the cabin. "We have instructions from Executive Operations," he said clearly. "All passengers are to remain seated until this matter is resolved. Do not attempt to leave your seats or use your phones." A confused hum passed through the rows. "What matter?" someone muttered. "I knew something was off," said another. Then came the sharp, indignant voice of Mrs. Whitmore. "What matter?" she barked. "This is absurd. I have rights. I have connections. Do you understand me?" Captain Reese said nothing. Before she could continue, a soft click cut through the silence. The intercom had been activated again, but it wasn't Reese this time. A new voice came through, deeper, smoother. Each word landed like a hammer, calm and deliberate. "This is Robert Johnson," it said, "CEO of Skyjet Airlines." Claire gasped out loud. The cabin went still. No one moved. Even the baby from earlier had gone silent. "2 of my children," the voice continued, were removed from their assigned seats this morning, not because of error, but because of an assumption, an ugly one. They were judged by their appearance. They were made to feel small. He paused. That mistake was yours, Mrs. Whitmore. Gasps broke through the hush. Mrs. Whitmore's face drained of all color. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. They belonged in those seats, the voice said. They earned them. You decided they didn't. You embarrassed them. You took what wasn't yours. And now, you're going to walk to the back of this plane, look them in the eye, return what you stole, and apologize. Mrs. Whitmore stared straight ahead. Her hands trembled slightly. Then, the voice added, you will be escorted off this flight. Claire looked like she might cry. The businessman across the aisle slowly set down his tablet. Someone in coach clapped once before stopping, unsure if it was allowed. Mrs. Whitmore slowly stood. She wobbled slightly, then straightened her shoulders. Her heels clacked against the floor as she made her way down the aisle. All eyes followed. She passed row after row, her eyes fixed straight ahead, lips pressed so tight they had nearly vanished. At row 30, she stopped. Sandra sat upright, her face calm. Solomon stayed seated, arms crossed. His stare was steady. Mrs. Whitmore's throat bobbed. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry. No one answered. She turned. 2 uniformed officers were waiting by the door. Mrs. Whitmore walked off the plane, escorted by security. A low hush lingered in the cabin, not heavy, but strange. Like the pause after a storm, quiet, waiting. The engines still hadn't fired back up. The seatbelt sign blinked above in a soft, unchanging glow. From the back of the plane, Sandra and Solomon stood as 2 flight attendants approached. Claire was one of them. Her eyes were red at the edges. The other crew member, older, said only, "Please come with us." They followed, quietly, walking the same aisle they'd been pushed down not long ago. This time, though, heads turned for a different reason. The silence of first class broke into a gentle wave of claps. Not loud, not dramatic, but full of meaning. The businessman from earlier gave a firm nod. An older woman touched her heart. Someone in coach whispered, "That's them." As the twins reached their seats minus 3A and 3B, Claire stepped in front of them. She was shaking slightly, her voice soft. "I'm sorry," she said. "I should have stopped it. I saw what happened. I knew it was wrong. And I didn't speak." Sandra looked at her, not angry, just tired. "Next time," she said quietly, "speak up." Claire nodded, wiping at her eyes. She stepped aside. Captain Reese approached next. His expression hadn't changed much, but his voice did. It carried more warmth than before. "Your father sends his regards," he said. "Says he's proud of you both. So are we." Solomon offered a rare smile. Sandra's eyes shimmered, but no tears fell. They sat. This time, no one questioned it. A few rows back, the boy with spiky hair whispered to his mom again. "Are they the kids?" His mother looked at him, then down the aisle toward the twins. "Yes," she said. "They are." The engines rumbled back to life. Slowly, the plane taxied toward the runway. No one asked for sparkling water. No one rolled their eyes. The plane felt different now, like everyone had just been shown something they weren't ready for, but couldn't ignore. The plane began to rise. As it climbed through the clouds, the morning sunlight spilled through the window. The sky opened in streaks of gold and blue. Sandra and Solomon sat side by side, their hands resting together between them. They didn't say anything. They didn't need to. They had walked through shame, through silence, through every glance that said you don't belong here. And instead of shouting back, they had chosen something louder. Quiet truth, still strength. Far above the ground, with the engines humming steady, they watched the clouds part. In a world too quick to judge, they chose stillness over noise, and it was enough to shake the sky. And just like that, With the sun pouring through the window and justice finally taking its seat, Sandra and Solomon rose above it all. Without shouting, without fighting. Just truth, courage, and a phone call that shook the sky. If this story hit your heart, don't just scroll past. Like if you believe respect shouldn't have a price tag. Subscribe if you want more real stories that challenge injustice and lift voices that matter. Comment below, what would you have done in their shoes? Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that quiet strength can be louder than hate. Thanks for riding with me, Story Family. Until next time, stand up, speak out, and stay fearless.